Hi, I'm Mark T from mentoredbymarkt.com. Have you ever tried herding cats? It really is a study in frustration. Cats don't know how to be a group. Each one goes a different direction. Each one wants something different. They would just as soon fight as share, and they may do both at the same time. Will they listen to you? Not likely. Not even with bribery. Here, kitty, 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 kitty. Ouch. Managing semi-annual releases can be a lot like herding cats. Have you ever experienced service providers who don't give updates on their compliance progress? Payments networks who can't or don't answer questions about the context or strategy surrounding a compliance requirement? How about internal partners who have coffee with you every day, then ghost your release compliance meetings? These are just some of the cats a compliance team can encounter. If your job description includes compliance management, let's talk about managing the semi-annual releases. What is a semi-annual release? Technology-based networks require regular upgrades for enhancements and maintenance. The challenge has always been how to schedule these upgrades to give enough lead time for connected partners to prepare and implement the changes, yet frequent enough updates to prevent the network from falling towards obsolescence, and a clear cadence so that all parties can integrate the upgrades into a regular business rhythm. This is where the semi-annual releases come in. The semi-annual releases contain tactical upgrades to support the following. Number 1, changing regulatory requirements. Number 2, infrastructure to support new products. Number 3, technology to support strategic direction. And number 4, maintenance and technical adjustments. The first 3 of these categories contain tactical requirements flowing from strategic direction. The last category contains network housekeeping items bundled into the release. Who has semi-annual releases? In the payments industry, entities that run semi-annual releases include the payment networks, issuing and acquiring processors, banks and credit unions, and technology companies supporting the payments industry. When do the semi-annual releases occur? April and October are the 2 months etched into the minds of any compliance team member. These months are when the payment networks implement their semi-annual releases. The release day is typically around the middle of the month and typically spans from Friday to Sunday. In MasterCard, batch processing like dual message clearing and batch reports, and single message transaction platforms upgraded to the latest operating system during this weekend. The dual message authorization part of the platform updates happened about 3 weeks later, early June and early November. In keeping with the payment network release cadence, most processors and service providers in the payment space bundle their own upgrades into matching April and October releases. For full disclosure, we do need to talk about minor releases. While major releases contain updates and items with global impact, many networks and service providers also run a cadence of minor releases. These may be monthly or, like MasterCard, a January and July minor release. These minor releases typically contain maintenance upgrades and infrastructure improvements for upcoming products. The people creating the release documents have decided that these upgrades have no impact on downstream partners, or possibly impact a very limited number of downstream partners. The people creating the minor release may reach out to those they feel will be impacted by the minor release, but they aren't obligated to do so. More about minor releases in a few minutes. Mandatory, optional, informational. Operation bulletins and release documents typically have a section that identifies the type of document, operational or release related. The audience. Does this impact issuers, acquirers, digital partners, or other downstream participants? Brand or network impacted. Does this affect single message, dual message, batch, tokenization? Region. What countries are impacted by this change? Release. Which release will contain this change if it is release-related change? Action indicator. Is this mandatory, optional, or informational? The entity managing the release is pretty good at identifying all but the last of these parameters. The action indicator is a bit problematic. First of all, the release entity, for example the payment network, is identifying their perspective. If the release entity is a downstream partner like an issuing or acquiring processor, they may just be relaying the perspective of the payment network. Let's look at the action indicator categories. Mandatory. The release entity feels all their target audience, those identified in the audience section, must comply with this requirement. Often, they are right. Sometimes, they are wrong. I have seen mandates on tokenization that forgot to say mandatory only if you participate in tokenization. Quick note. You will also want to watch for any compliance program following the release of mandatory release items. Non-compliance on mandatory items can cost you money. Optional. This may be the trickiest category. The release entity is actually saying that this is not required for some, but they may also be saying it is mandatory for others. Our tokenization mandate item is a good example. It should be listed as optional. This would indicate anyone not participating in tokenization doesn't need to do this. However, it also indicates that for anyone participating in tokenization, this release item is mandatory. Informational. These items are important if you want to be a strategic compliance team and not just a tactical one. Informational simply means there is nothing for you to do at this point. These items need to be watched by a good compliance team for two reasons. They may have unintended impacts during the release, and I have seen that happen. Or they may be groundwork for future new products. If you want to be ahead of the curve, you'll want to know what this optional release item is leading towards. Tips for effective release management. Effective release management is not complicated unless it's managed poorly. Then it's a never-ending train wreck. Here are some key principles that can help transform your compliance management from a perpetual train wreck to a well-oiled, effective team. Number 1. Find out what is not written in the release documents. Release documents tend to focus on the tactical requirements related to the release items. These documents almost never contain the strategy behind the tactical requirements. An effective compliance team will dig behind each release item to connect it to the strategic initiative it supports. A tactical requirement can only be properly fulfilled when guided by an understanding of the strategic initiative it supports. Number 2, knowing the release documentation layout, code words, and vocabulary. Each entity has a specific release document layout. Learn the layout and why that entity has included each title, keyword, and format. I have seen too many compliance teams miss important release items simply because they didn't take the time to learn the layout of the release documentation. Release documents are written in a unique language. Yes, most are created in English, but a special English unique to that network or processor. Each entity that releases documents has its own keywords that carry specific nuance and weight for them. Learn those words and what the entity's full meaning is for those words. They aren't trying to trick you. They have just been talking so long to their internal teams that their documentation will carry their own dialect. I have to tell you this story. I remember taking a team from one of my customers, it was a fairly large bank, to meetings at the MasterCard Technology Center. This bank had issued Visa products for decades. They were just beginning to issue MasterCard products. I had been embedded in this bank for a few years, so I knew them, their technology, their payments dialect. They had a strong Visa accent with a number of their issuer processors terms thrown in. I had worked at MasterCard for over a decade at this point, so I was also fluent in MasterCardian. The MasterCard technical team sat at one end of the table, and the customer sat at the other end. I happened to be sitting in the middle, MasterCard on this side, the customer on that side. Partway through the meeting, I had the feeling that I was a spectator at a tennis match. I kept turning one direction, then the other, back and forth. I wasn't just watching, I was translating. The MasterCard technical team would say something, and I would translate what they said in the customer's dialect. When the customer responded, I would translate their answer into MasterCardian. What does this have to do with release documents? Quite a bit. After those meetings, I spent extended time with that customer's compliance team, teaching them the MasterCard dialect so that they could more effectively triage the MasterCard documentation. Number 3, watch the operation bulletins. Release documentation may be split into two categories: technical compliance requirements, The creator of the release documentation assumes these items will require your company to create or change existing program coding and test before the release implementation date. Operational bulletins. The creator of the release documentation assumes these items may require you to modify some procedures, but they will not require coding and testing. The creator of the release documentation does not know your company. Therefore, go through all the technical release documents and the operational bulletins related to the release to determine what, at your company or at your service providers, needs to change to become compliant with the release. Number 4, know the strategic direction of your company and your service providers. An effective compliance team will know the strategic direction of its own company and of its service providers. Why? So that they can quickly identify and escalate strategies in the release items that don't align or conflict with your strategic direction. They can more effectively monitor the effectiveness of solutions created to address the release requirements. Does our compliance solution meet the tactical mandate requirements, and does it align with the strategic initiative behind the mandate? They can also easily spot release items tagged as optional that align with your corporate strategy. These items, though listed as optional, are actually mandatory for you because they further your strategic direction. Number 5, keep an eye on the minor releases and what is happening in other countries. As I've already stated, the entity creating the release documentation does not know your company. As a top-performing compliance team, you should review these minor releases. Also review major release items that don't apply to your market. In doing so, you're looking down the road for what may be coming in the future, and it can inform your company's strategy team and C-suite of future enhancements you can start working on now, giving you a jump ahead of your competition. And now, herding the cats. Here are some important context items that will help you herd the cats during the release management. Actually, these principles work all the time, so you'll want to keep them close by. Number 1. Every company has its own market, its own goals, and its own profitability drivers. They are not in business to make your company rich and famous. Learn and document the goals and business drivers for each mandating entity as well as for your service providers. You will be able to interact with them more effectively if you show that you know what is important to them. Number 2, know your company's size and the market share compared to the mandating authority and compared to your service providers. That size ratio should inform the tools you will use to interact and influence these entities. A major global bank can sneeze and MasterCard and Visa will run and get to the Kleenex. If you're a small regional bank, a fintech, or a credit union, your approach will need to be more nuanced and cooperative to be effective. Number 3, processors are complying with multiple networks, as well as with their own internal strategies, systems, and processes. Their compliance documents will look different from the network's compliance documents. They are trying to merge differing and possibly conflicting mandates received from competitors into one cohesive processor system. The more you can understand the scope of what your processor is dealing with, the more effectively you understand their documentation and how to appeal to them for changes that benefit them and you. Number 4, accountability is imperative. Always keep your upstream and downstream partners accountable. People and companies perform to what they are measured by. Have good contracts and a solid accountability program in place. And number 5, as much as possible, work constructively, cooperatively, and strategically with your partners. If you care about their business drivers, they're more apt to care about yours. If you found this video helpful, please click the like button and subscribe to this channel. If you have more questions about the payments industry, leave a message in the comments below. You can also contact me through my website, mentoredbymarkt.com, or via email, markt@mentoredbymarkt.com.